Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's informational session in which we'll preview our very first sequential reading group for school partners in the Communities and Schools Network, examining the 1619 project in community. Today is October 27th, 2021. Thank you so much for taking part in this informational session today. It is a little bit of a variant as opposed to a live demonstration of the material today. So my name is Zoe Cooper. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a school partnership specialist with Communities and Schools of Chicago. As I mentioned, this is our very first multi-session working group for school partners. I'm also thrilled to introduce our reading group facilitators from the Pulitzer Center, Joy Mukherjee and Kayla Edwards, who have graciously volunteered their time to join us on today's session. We will hold space a bit later in the presentation to share a bit more about Joya and Kayla's academic and professional experiences. So without further ado, I'm going to preview today's agenda. So we'll be going over some brief introductions just to introduce Communities and Schools of Chicago to those of you who are unfamiliar, as well as the Pulitzer Center and our organizational partnership. We'll be going over the 1619 project briefly, exploring the logistics and timing of the reading group itself. We will be going over some goals and themes. And then again, we'll be introducing our fellowship facilitators. We'll be previewing the application as well as a general timeline. And if this were a live event, we would typically be holding space for question and answer, but of course, those messages can be forwarded to myself or your assigned school partnership specialist. So just a little bit about Communities and Schools of Chicago. We are the leading nonprofit in Chicago dedicated to removing barriers so that students can unlock their potential and stay on the path to graduation. You'll see here that our organizational values are impact, relationships, social justice, and integrity. A little bit about the partnership program. This is where your school is located. We have 145 schools in our network who are taking part in the partnership program, just a subset of the 175 total partner schools that we work with in a given school year. This program links students at each of our partner schools with no-cost programming provided by a strong network of community partners that address school community needs in 6 key areas. These are academic support, college and career readiness, health and wellness, arts and culture, counseling and supportive guidance, and parent and family engagement. On this slide, you'll see just a little bit of history, and this is detailing the historical partnership between the Pulitzer Center and Communities and Schools. So we have been working together since the 2020-2021 school year. So this is our 2nd year of partnership. The Pulitzer Center's Education and Outreach Department offers several programs through CIS, which we then work to connect to our network of school partners. These are particularly in the areas of career awareness, as well as social science and civic engagement. These programs for SY22 are the Teacher Fellowship, which has been booked, journalist visits to the classroom, the 1619 project curriculum support, and a writing contest. And the deadline is approaching, and I just want to make a small note that by watching this information session, you should have access to the program referrals that are detailed above.
Thank you, Zoe, for having us here today. Hi, everyone. My name is Kayla Edwards. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the outreach assistant at the Pulitzer Center. I want to start off our section of today's info session by telling you a little bit about the Pulitzer Center. The Pulitzer Center is a nonprofit journalism and education organization based in Washington, D.C. Our mission, which you'll see on your screen, is to raise awareness of underreported global issues through both the direct support for quality journalism across all media platforms and our unique programs of education and public outreach. You'll also note that word on your screen, underreported global issues. We like to think that we're raising awareness of things that you see beyond the headlines, deeply reported stories that you might often miss in your local newspapers or large media outlets. And so our grantees cover those stories, and then we connect with K-12 educators through university level students to share that information and have deep discussions. And now to share a little bit more about the 1619 Project, the theme of the fellowship that we're talking about today. The 1619 Project is a special issue of the New York Times Magazine, and it marks the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the first enslaved Africans to Point Comfort, Virginia. The project itself includes essays, images, stories, and poems that challenge readers to reframe their understanding of US history and what it would mean to consider 1619 as the start of our nation's story. As you'll see in orange on the bottom of your screen, there are two central questions that the project really asks its readers. A, how do societal structures develop to support the enslavement of Black people and the anti-Black racism that was cultivated in the US to justify slavery influence many aspects of modern laws, policies, systems, and culture? And then we also are asking the question in the project, how have resistance, innovation, and advocacy by Black Americans over the course of American history contributed to the nation's wealth and the strengthening of its democracy? You can learn more about the 1619 Project by visiting the website of the New York Times Magazine, or by visiting the Pulitzer Center's website to read more about the educational resources that were developed by the Pulitzer Center. And now I just want to talk a little bit more about this reading group and fellowship that you are learning about. So this will be a 3-session reading group where we'll closely examine a selection of essays, creative works, and additional resources from the 1619 Project. Our aim is to journey together in community, holding space for discussion, reflection, and connection. Candidates who are interested in this program should be able to set aside 2 to 3 additional hours in addition to each of the sessions where we'll meet to review assigned reading and resources. Our current plan includes reading the first introductory essay to the 1619 Project, and then participants will have the opportunity to weigh in on what other essays we read and discuss together. The Pulitzer Center, as the education partner for the 1619 Project, will facilitate these conversations and help you explore, while your CIS of Chicago partners and leaders will be there for all of the logistic needs.
Thank you, Kayla. My name is Joya Mukherjee. I work for the education department at the Pulitzer Center, and I use she, her pronouns. So this slide really captures the anticipated individual journey in this collective experience. When you are applying to this program, we'd like you to demonstrate that you have a clear understanding of who you are in the context of a larger school community. Who are you? What roles do you play at your school? And what are your professional goals as it relates to that position? We also want you to have a well-articulated why for participating in this experience. Why do you want to begin engaging with this project in community with other CPS staff, educators, or administrators? What you don't need to have is a plan for how you are going to leverage the 1619 Project to enrich curriculum or advance diversity and equity and inclusion goals at your school. Remember, we are simply reading together and learning together. That vision for the project is not required at the beginning of this experience. Throughout this process, we'll be reading this project deeply. We'll be evaluating themes and issues and making connections to our experiences, local and national news, and our school communities. That being said, I think so many professional developments focus on strategies and teaching tools. And while that is very useful, that is not what we're doing. I just want to reiterate that we're reading this beautiful, deep, and challenging text together like students. Finally, we want you to be able to leave this experience understanding the foundational thesis of the project, exploring at least 2 additional essays, and a vision for how this project might speak to your goals as an educator, administrator, or service provider. I think for me too, reading this project has taught me a lot about how I think and my understanding of American history and really how systems work. And we want you to start to think about that as you leave this conversation. So we've made a list of anticipated thought points here, and these are the questions that are going to be driving our instruction together. What is my plan for using this project as someone who is hoping to incorporate the project's particular set of information, knowledge, or history into my work? How do the parameters of my school community align with the goals of the 1619 project? What is my vision for my role beyond my title? What role do I play in the context of my school's student community? How can I approach equity and an anti-bias approach into my school with Chicago's young people? How can I position myself as a culture shifter within my school, priming and preparing my fellow educators to challenge the prevailing narrative of American history and utilize the 1619 project materials as a conduit to bridge the gap between history and more contemporary equity issues? How can I cultivate a professional practice that celebrates the rich cultural narrative of communities of color without centering historic trauma and marginalization? And finally, how can I integrate what other students of the 1619 project are doing within their classrooms into my school's existing curricula?
So I'm excited to jump back in and fully introduce our fellowship facilitators. I am excited and grateful to be able to share a bit more about these brilliant women. So if you took part in Communities in Schools equity training last spring, you may recognize Joya as our illustrious facilitator. She, again, is a Chicago-based coordinator for the education team at the Pulitzer Center. In her previous job, she managed creative writing programs for Chicago public school students, focusing primarily on short-form memoir and novel-length fiction. She has worked in education for 10 years, beginning her career as a special education teacher in Compton, California. Joya holds a BFA in dramatic writing from New York University, as well as a Master of Philosophy from Trinity College Dublin in film theory, and an MA in special education from Loyola Marymount University. Kayla Edwards is the outreach assistant at the Pulitzer Center. In the summer of 2018, she was a Pulitzer Center education intern and spent many hours thinking about Nathaniel Rich's piece, Losing Earth. In the spring of 2020, she graduated from Davidson College with a BA in political science and a minor in Hispanic studies. At Davidson, Kayla served as the opinion editor of Davidson's student newspaper, The Davidsonian. Her interests include public policy, promoting student voices in public discourse, and art museums. So here's just a small preview of the application for participation in the reading group. An application is an interesting word to use because there are no real qualifiers for participation in this fellowship. The application primarily serves as an information gathering space, just to make sure that folks have enough time and energy to dedicate to participation, and also just sort of gauging what skills and experiences they're bringing to the table to sort of form our syllabi in advance of that first session. So this will be a Google form. It will be between 5 and 10 questions, gauging general information such as your name, school, occupation, etc., your availability and preferred meeting time. We do already have dates set for meeting. We will just be gauging your best window of time for participation. We'll be collecting any relevant experience or existing knowledge of the 1619 project, your intentions for participation, materials and reading preferences, and any extra concerns or accommodation needs. Applications will be open to any CIS school partner faculty or staff. Participation or watching today's information session is of course not required for participation in the reading group. If you have any colleagues who are working in schools outside of the CIS partnership, unfortunately, they will not be included for participation. And here you'll just see a small timeline. So on November 3rd, which I believe is about a week from today, applications will be going out. So this will be going out network-wide to those 145 schools that are taking part in the partnership program at Communities in Schools. Applications will be due back on November 16th, and throughout the month of November, prior to Thanksgiving break, we will be going over the internal applications review, wherein my team will review submissions for participation. In December, notifications will be made. Our first session will be on January 13th. The second session will be on March 10th, and then our final session will be on May 12th. Throughout the remainder of the school year, we will be establishing an evaluation pathway for participants to share any feedback about their participation in this reading group. As always, your feedback informs our Activate events and only ensures that they improve over time. And if this were a live event, we would typically be holding a question and answer portion. And that's it for today's session. So thank you very much for participating, for watching, for sharing any thoughts or ideas that you may go forth and share with your assigned school partnership specialist or any other CIS of Chicago contact. Thank you to Joya and Kayla for sharing your ideas and experiences today and serving as our illustrious facilitators. And also, I've done my team a great disservice by not introducing them at the beginning of this session. So I just want to give a special shout out to our senior school partnership specialist, Kayla Davis, my fellow school partnership specialist, Dan Heiniger, and the associate director of school partnerships, Sukata Bell. Thank you so much.